Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Handy Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters. Sulky, express yourself with Sulky and create with confidence. Brother, it's so easy with Brother at your side. And Quilt Cut, easy fabric cutting for quilters. Hi, and welcome to Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community. I'm Mary Kate Carpetras, and with me today is June Mellinger, who is the Director of Product Development and Promotion from Brother International. And hi, June.
Hi.
Today we have a lot of flying geese out here on display, and flying geese can be a little challenging, a little tricky to get those angles and those corners all lined up nicely. And I understand you have great ideas for us as to what we can do as we're working our way through that technique, correct?
That's right.
Great.
You know, I was just recently looking at a quilting magazine, and it struck me how often flying geese or a derivative of it are used in quilts. One should not be afraid if one comes up with something that looks slightly different than what we were fully intending it to look like. You know, I have the quilt over here, the gold quilt, and that was a flying geese pattern that we were taught several years ago. And we had a lot of fun with it. And you can see that it was important for all of the points to line up and to be horizontal to one another, and then have the points flow in a straight line. So that was very good to learn and so forth. So then I said, well, let me try this for this television show. So I started to work with my flying geese, and you can see the process here. We have to have our rectangles pre-cut, and then I had that. That's about, let's see, I have a ruler on here, so that one was about 4.5 inches, and then I have these 2.5-inch squares as well. So the first step in the process would be, of course, to lay the 2.5-inch square down here on the rectangle and start to sew. And you proceed through this. But what's really cool with a machine like the one we have in front of us today is that it has a laser on it. So when I'm sewing this, it's really important that I have a straight diagonal line. So let me show you how this works, because the next step would be to place the second 2.5-inch square off to the right here. And you see how the little ears cross over one another. That's really important, because that's where your points begin.
Right.
You know that, but not everybody
does, but still,
right?
You know, the thing is, even with a quick corner piecing approach to making a flying geese unit, you still have to deal with that bias and that stretch and making sure it's accurate, and that can be, you still can end up with a little wonkiness in there. So I'm interested to see how this works.
And you know what's really cool too about this machine that I'm working with here today? It does have the laser light, and you have the ability to move your needle position in different ways as well. But I have my needle position matching the laser in front of it. And that's interesting, because you just mentioned about the diagonal stretch that can happen. And you know, if you want to draw a line on the fabric, or it could stretch your fabric, and you sure don't want that to happen. So the laser line that's pointing towards you, it's kind of like guiding you, pulling you forward. And quite honestly, when I was doing this project, I had to switch to a different machine, and when I didn't have that line, I was like, darn, I could use that line there. So that's really a pretty cool feature.
Get used to it.
So I have the machine set up with a foot controller on it, so I'm going to just press that and start sewing. And you can see what's happening. The laser right to the point, I'm done, and I cut my thread, and I have the stitch straight across exactly where I need it to be. And what I would then do is take my ruler, at my rotary cutter, and cut that off, and I would have a perfectly formed flying geese. So that's ready to go. And then I would continue along with the process to add more of the shapes. And then I would want to sew them together. And I want to be sure that they match up perfectly, so that when I'm done, the points match perfectly.
Right.
And if they don't, then I'm kind of out of luck. And
well, if you're a perfectionist, you're out of luck. If you're like me, maybe it still goes into the quilt. But
that's right. And you can see that the one that's here, that's a little bit larger.
Yeah,
and
you can have a big floating corner.
There. So I have that floating area there. And I did trim that away on this here sample, so that now it matches perfectly. But there were some that I did not. And you can see by the larger mat over here to the left what I was able to do. But for right now, let's talk about that cover.
Okay.
So I wanted to make these flying geese so that I had a project that I was eventually going to use this technique in a quilt. But for today, I have a really neat cover that I was making for my my Kindle.
Okay.
And you know, these are kind of flimsy, not flimsy, but they have a mind of their own sometimes, and they can fall out of a bag.
Okay.
And you want to have them with some protection. So that's why I said this would be the perfect item to make for this. When I was making this case, which is both sides,
It's cute.
I decided to just have the row of the flying geese, and I made two separate pieces, and I added a 2-inch panel on the side of the geese. So I sewed them together kind of like a little bag, and then I said, well, I need to add some binding. So I made some bias binding, and I started to attach that all the way around, and that's going to be my case. I don't have to have any kind of a cover because it's tight enough that the Kindle will go all the way down into
right
the
in
end, and I'll just be able to pull it out when I'm
That's
ready
great.
to get at it. But I thought that was quite pretty. And also I used my stitch in the ditch foot to make this great top stitching here in both places.
Okay.
So that's a great use for
Absolutely.
the flying geese, and
Absolutely.
it's not a commitment, but it's a learning process,
Exactly.
right? And so I thought that was really great.
Got some other samples here.
Yeah,
so
I do.
This, I'm curious, because this is not a flying geese.
No, it's not.
What
And
is
I was
this?
tempted to take that off the set, and then I said, no, there's a reason for this
Okay.
story. Because remember when we were making our geese, and we made sure that they were snugged up, and then we were all done, we had to cut away the extra piece. Well, that extra piece will have this little fleck of blue in it.
Okay.
So that's what these triangles were. Can't throw anything away. And
Right.
I said, so let me take my extra triangles, and I sewed them together to make these squares, and then I came out with this kind of interesting design. So that was what that was about.
And there are people who write patterns to get this look.
Yeah.
And you're just using,
I'm just
your,
using my
your
little extra
scraps,
piece.
basically,
That's
to
right,
make this.
that's right.
And what's this destined for?
I think what I'm going to do is use this either for a mug mat, or I will make a pincushion out of it, because I was
Oh,
looking
cute.
at an idea in one of your magazines also that had the pincushion. I said, there you go, I got the potential here for this, and I'm ready to go.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And below there's another opportunity that was made from a mistake. I was putting my flying geese together, and I made a mistake. I had them positioned incorrectly. So I wound up making these stripes instead.
Oh.
And it really looks kind of cool.
It's not a mistake, it's just serendipity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And what,
So,
what do you think you might do with this?
you know, I was reading somewhere how maybe you could do, like, they call it a mug rug. So kind of have the little mug mat and the extra areas so you can put your snack there and your coffee cup. Great gift for the holidays for
Yeah.
anyone. And quick and easy to do. Once I had made my 4 little square rectangles here, then I added my 2-inch panels on the side for binding, and then I can add the binding, and I'm good to go.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Really cute, really
So,
cute.
but you know, here's my mat, and
Yes.
again, that's my big project where I had these kind of a larger area that was kind of a mistake because I needed to have the narrow seam here for the flying geese. But I said, I like the way this looks, and I'm not gonna take it apart. I'm not gonna trim it. I'm gonna add these together, so kind of a very distinct look. And then I said, well, the mat, the basis of the fabric can be kind of plain, you know. So what can I do to kind of dress that up? So as you can see, I kind of extended a line from that seam of the original flying geese, and I made the stitching on here. And that looks okay, and it's kind of artistic. But what I can do with my machine is, again, it's a little bit, the laser positioning line on this machine will have different reactions to the different fabrics. And in this case, it's a little dull, but that's also could be to do with the lighting here on set. But I can see the line there, and it's pointing out where the stitching is going to take place. But I can also use that line, I can move it so that the stitching, the line will move to another side of the stitching. So the laser positioning line acts as a guide for me.
Okay.
So that's a really neat feature with this product. And also, this machine here has a larger workspace. It's like 15¼ inches. So I can really, I don't have to worry about anything kind of getting hung up
it's a
over
nice,
on the right
nice
side.
wide throat.
It's extra wide throat. And then when I had the wide table on, my fabric is placed perfectly while I'm working. I don't have to worry about anything getting moved to different places. So I have my, I'm going to take this straight stitch foot off, a utility stitch, if you will, and I had some extra feet under here. So I'm going to select my open, it's not an open toe foot, it's my end foot that has a wider opening in it. Now that will allow me to select a decorative stitch that has more of a side-to-side design to it. And so I'm going to select one of the stitches, and let's say I do a stippling stitch, and because that's kind of decorative and looks kind of different. And then I can see the laser strutting out here from before when we were using it, but that's just kind of a guide. So what I can also do is take the positioning pen, and now I can use the point. I can press on here, and you can see the laser actually just moved over here to the right. I'm going to move it over here again, and it moved it back here to the left. Trust me on that, it did.
Now I can see it from here.
So now I kind of have a guide for when I'm working. So I can actually move my fabric and put the laser, it's really shining on the stitching as it is now. It's kind of a guide for me as I'm working. I can move it over further over to the right if I'd like as well. But let's say I'm going to start my stitching, and I'm going to lower my cursor, select my stitch, say OK, I like that position for the laser, and then close this out and start sewing with my pressed foot attached. And so now I have the laser guide on that stitching, if you will, and I'm doing a stippling stitch with the machine. And there's another feature about this product as well that would let me say, when I get to this last line here of the crossover, I can actually stop my machine, press the laser, the pen pal object, and then I'm going to say, I want to stop stitching right here on that stitching. You heard the ring?
I did.
It said it's going to, let's do that one more time. It's going to stop in 1.87 inches. So it sets that, ready to go, and keep going. And I could set that anywhere on the fabric as long as I have the base of the machine to press down upon.
Okay.
Of the table. So it's going to stop fairly shortly. Going to give me a little bit of area to work towards. If I want to add more stitching, I can.
Okay.
And I even have the foot controller set to do one stitch. So if I'd like, it does kind of a reinforcement stitch, and then I can press my scissor, and I've got the thread cut, and now my design has stopped exactly where I need it to be, just before the stitching. And I could turn the corner, if you will, to finish this up. So there's a lot of different features that you have with your products today, but the most important thing is to remember that you have to throw some things away. One cannot keep everything.
Occasionally you do, yes.
But for those items that you do set aside, there's lots of opportunities to make different items with those little carrying cases or little bags and pin cushions and so forth. And they make great gifts. And when your friends get them, they always look at you and say, wow, you made that?
Exactly, exactly. And no one ever knows. I mean, the traditional way of doing a flying geese unit is to have the points right up there, butted up against the seam line. But there's nothing wrong with this. It's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Beautiful use of fabric, and it looks fantastic. So thank you so much for showing us these ideas. We hope that you are inspired to use some of your scraps and transform them into something beautiful. Thanks so much, and we will see you next time. Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Handy Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters. Sulky, express yourself with Sulky and create with confidence. Brother, it's so easy with Brother at your side. And Quilt Cut, easy fabric cutting for quilters.